All right, I'm going to start up, so I'm going to go over all three parts of this and let you know the kind of thing that I was looking for. All right? So the first thing that you were supposed to do in here was to come in and create a class pet that had these four attributes. All right? So in other words, every pet will have a name, a type, an age, and a weight. Does it make sense to you that those are what are referred to as instance variables? Because each instance or each pet will have its own. All right. And even though it's possible to have two pets that have the same name, the same type, the same age, and the same weight, they are two different pets. All right. So then it said to demonstrate the application, the class in an application that creates several pet projects with the name, the type, the age, and the weight of the pet. All right. Getters and setters with no data validation. And let me just say, that if I'm going to show mine right now, and if you say, well, mine worked and I didn't do it like yours, that's a good thing. All right? I'm definitely not saying that the way that I do everything is the best way to do it. I'm telling you that the way that I do things is the way that I do things. And sometimes, it's no excuse, but it's just a time thing. I just put it in there. Boom. All right, so for looking at that one, this is what I did. So I added for my, in fact, let's go over the pet class first, all right? So here it was, I just put a comment in there. This is taken right out of the handout, so I don't think I have to go over that, but this is what I had. So the four pieces of data, a string for the pet's name, a string for the pet's type, an int for the age, and an int for the weight. I'm taking for granted that all makes sense to everybody. All right? And if you raise your hand, why didn't you make age a double? Why didn't you make weight a double? Because I didn't. All right? I've said this to you before. I can say this with all guys in here. Hopefully it doesn't sound sexist, but I hate that. I still remember once being it was at a mall, and I heard these two women talking, and one said, "Oh, what a cute little kid. How old is he?" 37 months. The kid's over 3 frickin' years old. Who the hell talks like that? Well, she does. All right, and that's fine. Again, that's everybody's right. But the point is, I think an int for both of those works. All right, just like somebody who wants to be under 200 pounds. I'm 199.8 pounds. Okay, all right. So I had two different constructors. So I probably should have put a thing in here. This was my no arg constructor. Why? Because it had no arguments, right? So I said if we created a pet and we didn't pass anything in, we should set its name to unknown name. We should set its type to unknown type. We should set its age to 1. We should set its weight to 10. Now, some of you came in here, and it's fine that you did this. And you did something like this. I don't know. Let's just say 10. Maybe that's not a good weight. Maybe that is. I don't know. I don't really care. All right. But if you did that and you created defaults like that, then you could change that and make this def age and def weight. You didn't have to do that. But I noticed that at least a couple of you who came up and talked to me, that's what you did. And that's fine. All right. So then I came in here. Here was the other one. I asked you to do absolutely no validation on here, all right, on the first part. So again, one thing to realize is right here, this is expecting a string. If I do this and I don't pass in a string, so if I pass in 37, the program is going to blow up. Does that make sense? Because the system, it does a mapping, and if it doesn't find a string there, it's going to blow up, all right? So I said just take that, set it to name, take that one, set it to type, that one, set it to age, that one, set it to weight. All right. Remember, if I'd used, for example, here, if I'd used weight, Like if I had done that, then I would have had to have said, you know, there's shortcuts and long cuts. I just give them different names. All right. Then I was expecting that you were going to do the getter and setter name. Again, no validation. Public string name, get, return name, set, name equal value. Public string type, get, return type, set, type equal value. Public int age, get, return age, set, age equal value. Public int weight, get, return weight, set, weight equal value. Any questions on any of that? Anything that doesn't make sense? All right. Now, you've got two ways that you can handle printing this information out. Our book talked about both ways. You can either come in here and do an override on the toString method, which is totally fine. All right. Or you can do what I did, which is to come into the main, and I just added another method called displayPetInfo. Again, either one you could get to work. All right. So here was main. Create an empty pet, P1. Does it make sense with an empty pet? If this works right there, if that line works, the line of code, this line, if that works, that should go over to here, that should find this one, and that should be everything that's set up for that pet. Does that make sense? So that should print out, when we get down to this, it should print out name, unknown name, type, unknown type, age, 1, weight, 10. Does that make sense? All right, let's just save it and run it and see if indeed that's what happens. Okay, so that appears to work. All right, I'm not even going to go on. I'm just going to hold that right there, and I'm going to go on in here, and I'm going to just keep going down. So that was the first pet. Then I said, okay, now we've got that pet. Let's go in there and do some updating. All right, so that was the original. Let's go in and add it. Well, unknown name is kind of stupid. So I changed the name to Sparky. I changed the type to dog. I changed the age to 5. I changed the weight to 25. Those are all arbitrary. They mean absolutely nothing. They were just done because those should invoke each one of those setters. Does that make sense? All right. So when it says updated pet info, it should now say name Sparky, type dog, age 5, weight 25. I could add stuff on the end. I could say 5 years. I could say 25 pounds. I didn't care about that. To me, that's when you're starting to tweak the program. I'm more concerned with you understanding the logic behind it. All right. So I go back to here where I was running it, and I hit enter, and there's the updated stuff. Sparky, dog, 5, 25. Any questions at all on this one? Anything that doesn't make sense so far? All right. Then let's go on and look and see what else. I don't remember if that was it or not, to be honest with you. So I created a second pet. This one had everything. So since it has 1, 2, 3, 4 attributes, it's going to go over here and look for a constructor with 4 attributes. And it'll find this. So the first one will be the name, the second one will be the type, the third one will be the age, the fourth one will be the weight. So in other words, that one should be set to Mittens cat, so name, type, age, weight. And that's what should print out right here. Does that make sense? All right. So let's double check and make sure that's what prints out. All right. So again, the 4 pieces of information, the name, the type, the age, and the weight. Okay. And then finally, we don't have to go back and reset everything. That was just to show you we can reset anything we want to reset. All right. Now, just so you're aware of this, let's assume that you, for example, this would be dumb, but let's just assume that everything in here is a dog. You with me? Everything in here is a dog. We're just going to assume that. If everything that was in there was a dog, we could have come in there under type and had a get. We could have had no set. If we remove that set, then it's read-only. You can't change the type. then every type would be the same thing and you couldn't change it. Does that make sense? You can also just have a set in there, which means it's write only. It's not done often. I can't give you a really good occurrence of when that would happen, but it is possible to do it. You have to put one in or the other in. Maybe you've noticed that, maybe you haven't. But if you just put that in there without any get or set, you get an error. And basically the error says you haven't provided anything. And it needs a get and or a set. All right? So that should do the updated stuff. So again, now this should say name mittens, type cat, age 8, weight 25, if we did all that correctly. So we look at this again, and there it is. That's 50% of your test tomorrow, is being able to set that up. Maybe I gave you too many points for that. I don't know, but I wanted two things. First of all, I figured if you did that, you got to start. And even if you can get the next one, you can get it half done, you're still going to pull a C. All right? Any questions at all on this first part? Anything that doesn't make sense? This is your chance to ask.
Are you going to put this on YouTube?
I'm taping it right now, I think. Yeah, it's being taped right now. Right? All right, so that's the first part. Again, no questions? All right, then I'm just going to close this one out. And I'm going to bring up the second one. All right, before we even go through any of this, let me jump over and let's take a look at what we were supposed to do in the second part. All right, pretty short, it's right there. Now, I think I called mine Pet2 instead of Pet App V2, but it's no big thing. That's just the name of my folder. All right, make the pet class abstract. Well, the first thing that you should do then, if that's the case, after you make the copy, is I'm going to come over here to pet and notice abstract. The word abstract should be first. Everybody hear that? It shouldn't be class abstract pet, pet class abstract, or some derivation of that. All right? Now, it is possible that you can put modifiers in there, public, private, protected, etc. We're not even worried about that stuff. So that was the first thing that you were supposed to do. All right. Then you're supposed to create an abstract method called speak, which returns a string. What is that? That, at the very bottom of this class, all I did was to add that. Okay? For lack of better words, that is like a contract. What that says is that any routine, routine's a bad word, that any class I'm going to create that's based off of the abstract class pet must have a speak method, and it must return a string. I didn't put a lot in here. Literally, for the dog it says woof, and for the cat it says meow. That's it. All right? That's not what's important. The idea behind doing that was to make sure you understand that abstract classes can contain abstract methods. And if they do contain abstract methods, then any class that inherits from that abstract class must include that method. All right? Technically, they're doing an override because this isn't doing anything. An abstract method cannot have a body. And Ethan here will tell you, we looked at the same stuff this semester in Java, and it pretty much is set up the same way. All right? So you're going to see something almost just like that when you get to the Java class. So, any questions on what's in here? Because other than that, I didn't change anything in here. In other words, I added two things. I added the word abstract right there, and then over here, I added that. That's all that I did. Any questions on that? All right, then what else did our specs here say? You know, there will come a time, I can almost guarantee it, that whether you work for a company or whether you freelance and you work on your own or whatever, somebody will give you specifications. You'll look at those specifications and you will think to yourself, my God, they're assholes. You just will. They don't know what the hell they're doing. One thing I have found when I've gone out and created websites for people and I say, what do you want? And they'll say, I have absolutely no idea. I was hoping you'd make something for me and then I can tell you what I don't want. And that's kind of their philosophy. I used to do that and I'd start working on stuff for people, but then I realized I don't have a clue as to what they want. So what I would tell them is, I'm not even going to meet with you until you go out and look at some of your competitors and at least see what you like in there. Sometimes they'll do that. They'll have a half dozen competitors, and it's the old, I want this from this website, this from this website, this. I can give you that, but at least I've got some kind of an idea then what they want. All right, what color do you want? A lot of times, hey, red's my favorite color. All right, so they want red. All right, and then you give them red. Oh man, I don't want red. It looks really bad in there. All right, but that's not that important thing. That kind of stuff is real easy to change. What we're talking about in here is the logic. All right, so we've just done this. Now we want to create a class dog that inherits from class pet. So in other words, it will say class dog :pet. Does that make sense? Yes? That's this. Then we want to add 2 new fields, which means for both of these, right there, for both of those, what that means is that we will have 2 more fields that are distinct to this type of pet. Does that make sense? So only dogs will have an isFixed. Oh, I jumped up, sorry. Only dogs will have a purebred and a numtrix. All right? And you might say, those are kind of stupid things you put in. Yeah, I'm not even going to deny that. All right? I was creating this yesterday while the afternoon class was working on something else. And it's just what I came up with. All right? And then I thought, well, I can make it a little better, when I go home. And I didn't. I didn't really look at it, to be honest with you. I got some weird fixation that, although maybe it's because she's overweight like me, I watched The Voice last night, and I kind of like Kelly Clarkson. And she was being a real asshole to Blake Shelton, which I thought was kind of cool, too. And then she was an asshole to the other Adam Levine. And I thought, wow, I really kind of do like her. All right? So I did that instead of modifying this. All right? Okay. Then after we do the dog, then we do the same kind of thing with cat, but instead of purebred of type bool, it's isFixed of type bool. Instead of numtrix of type int, it's numhairballs of type int. You may or may not have guessed from looking at this, I have no affinity for cats. All right? Still remember, this. I'm dating myself here. None of you probably have heard of him, or maybe you have, but back when I was your age, I would watch Johnny Carson. He did a monologue once on cats, and basically the fact that they serve no purpose. And how one of them was, he had a picture of one that was sitting on its television, and eventually it just fell off. And he was like, that was probably the most work that cat has done all day long. Yeah, and that's me. Now, if you say, well, I got a cat and I love it, fine, I don't care. All right. Then create several dog objects and cat objects. Make sure to have the base handle these. And then also make sure to implement the speak method. Well, hopefully what you found, if you got that far, then hopefully what you found, for example, if I take this right here, that override, if I take that and I just comment it out, what happens? I get an error. So I'm going to try to run this. And I get an error. What's the error? It's saying, hey, you're not implementing that method, speak. This class is inheriting from pet. Since it's inheriting from pet, since pet is abstract, since pet has an abstract method named speak, you must include that method named speak. You're not doing that. That's why we get the error. All right, so I come back over here again, uncomment it, everything will be cool. All right, I guess I've got the cat up first. It really and truly doesn't matter, sorry. All right, so this was class cat. Cat inherits from pet. It has these two things. This is what I'm looking for tomorrow, that you understand this. This says that what's going to happen is anytime I create a cat, its name, its type, its age, and its weight will be handled by the parent. So that is saying right there, that says go to pet and find pet to handle these four things. As far as these two, F for fixed, NH for number of hairballs, and originally I had if there, IF is fixed. If's a key word. So if you put if in there, it doesn't like it. So then I thought, well, I'll change it to is, which is another key word. Finally, I said, the hell with it, and I made it F. That, again, really isn't that important. I would not recommend using XYZ here because people who are going to look at your code might get confused. If I'm creating code, and I know as an example that, when I get done, that Ryan is going to go in and he's going to be the person modifying my code and maintaining my code. All right? Unless one of my goals in life is to have him as my new best friend, then what I want to make sure is that I do some commenting and I use names that are self-documenting enough that he doesn't have to come ask me all the time, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by this? I'm not requiring that you put comments in your programs when you take tests. Some people, this might be the only day of the semester that goes fast is when you have a test. All right? But you really should get used to putting some comments in, even if you go back and put them in later. Anything that you end up putting out into your portfolio, all right, where people can go and look at whatever it is you worked on, that's what they're scrutinizing. Does Tony comment? Does he use good variable names, etc.? And I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, this is fantastic. No, it's okay, which is what I was shooting for. All right? So the only two, there's one right there. There's the is fixed, because I didn't tell you yet to do, on this one, I didn't tell you to do any kind of validation. You might have, but I didn't tell you to. All right? And this was the number of hairballs. This was overriding the to speak, which just returned me out. The dog, virtually identical. All right? Dog inherits from pet. Instead of is fixed, it's got purebred. Instead of num hairballs, it's got num tricks. Still, the name, the type, the age, and the weight are being handled by pet. All right? And I am responsible then for handling the purebred and responsible for handling the number tricks. Same kind of thing, and I want to make sure you get this. If I try, let's say that I create this. So I create a new dog object. I could show it to you, but it's just going to be an error. So I come in here and I say bingo for the name. Type, let's just say golden retriever. Age 6. Weight 75. Boolean for purebred, don't know. I'm going to get an error there because the only two acceptable values are true and false. So if I put in something other than true or false, I'm going to get an error right there. All right? So I put in true. Over here, number of tricks, I put again, I don't know. It's not an int. So it's going to break. The problem with the way it is right now, I could put in here negative 57. I could put in here negative 57. I could put in here negative 57. I could put all those in right now because we haven't done any validation yet. Now that would be dumb, but we could do that. All right? We're not doing any of the validation until the last go around. All right, so I go back over here and I go back to my pet class here. And you're going to see it's a lot of the same, to the program, a lot of the same stuff we did before. Now, though, I can't create a new dog that's got nothing in it. Does that make sense to people? Because if I put nothing in here whatsoever, all right, It's not giving me an error until I do that. And it says, hey, this is the only one that I've got that kind of corresponds to anything. Because remember, I've got to pass some information to the parent, right? The parent's got to do the name. The parent's got to do the type. The parent has to do the, what else is there? The age, and the parent has to do the weight. The parent is pet. All right? If I do this, the system is confused. It doesn't know how to handle that. So again, this, and maybe you noticed this. I don't know. Maybe you didn't. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to comment this out. All right? So if I come through here and I say Sparky, comma, space, the system will let me know. So if I forget, and all I did was put my mouse over the word dog, and it says I need another string, then an int, then an int, then a bool, then an int. So if you get confused from your own code, all right, there are little hooks or whatever you might want to call them in there. So again, I think you all get this, but I just want to make sure that's the name, that's the type, that's the age, that's the weight, that's the purebred, and that's the number of tricks. Does all that make sense? All right. So again, that should come back when I write this, because this is the same thing I had last time, except I added, we only had these four, I added purebred and I added num tricks. All right. So this should say, name Sparky, type golden retriever, age 3, weight 85, purebred false, num tricks 7. If I did it right, that's what it should say. Oh, I forgot, and the dog says woof. All right? But the name, the type, the age, the weight, that's all from pet. The purebred and the num tricks, that's from dog. All right? And how did I get that the dog says woof? What I did was at the end of my routine, look what I'm doing here. I've got a write line. I'm embedding a method inside of a method. That's totally legit to do that. I'm having a method, call a method. It always works from the inside out. So the first thing it does is it does the d.speak. All right? And it says, okay, I've got that. It says the dog says, and then it adds that stuff in a blank line, and it brings it in as a write line. All right? So that's the first one. I didn't change anything after it, or did I? I don't remember. I guess I did. Okay, so now, what? Sparky put on 15 pounds. We found out he really is a purebred. He's a year older than he was, and he's learned a few more tricks. So again, that should come back now and say, name Sparky, type golden retriever, age 4, weight 100, purebred true, num tricks 11. I don't have to put these in the same order as those. All right. I can, maybe I should have, but I didn't. So let's see if for the second run through here, where it says updated dog D1 info, if that's what we get. All right. So still the same name, type, new age, new weight, change the purebred status, change the number of tricks, and still says woof. Any questions on any of that? All right. Then I did the same kind of thing that we had before. I mean, there wasn't a lot of variety in this. So this should come out and say, name Mittens, type cat, age 7, weight 23, is fixed false, number hairballs 3. And there it is. And plus we called at the end, so it says now the cat says meow. This, just so you know, this line of code right here, that line, that's an example of what's referred to as polymorphism. Why? Because we're passing in here, all right, the system knows that there, call the dog speak, there it knows, call the cat speak. So it's the same method that, it's the same method name, but the system knows which version to call based on the context of which object is calling it. Does that make sense? All right, then we came in, and for mittens, we changed its age to 8, the is fixed to true, and the num hairballs to 8. So let's see if indeed that's been updated, and it should still say meow. So what did we change? Not the name, not the type. We changed the age. We did not change the weight. We changed the is fixed. We changed the number of hairs. I guess I thought it was hairballs, but that's fine. And still the cat says meow. Are there any questions on this one? Now, if it's, you go home tonight, maybe you're watching this, and you do have a question, please email me. I'm not guaranteeing that I'll answer it tonight, but I will try. All right? All right, so that's the second part. So let me close that. And let me bring up the third part. All right, before we do that, let's take a look at what's here. That's all of it. Add the following exceptions to be used for both the dog class and the cat class. Create constants. So what I did was I created a constant, 2 of them. One that I called min age that I set to 1, and max age that I set to 25. All right? I created a min weight that I set to 3 and a max weight that I set to 200. All right? Now you could raise your hand and say, shouldn't you have really had min weights for dogs as opposed to cats because they're usually different? And cats oftentimes live longer than dogs do, etc. Could have done that. All right? And if I'm not going to ask you to go into that kind of detail tomorrow. All right, but I'm just saying that could have been done. So again, these were, just arbitrary values that I came up with. All right, if you think they're way out of range and you wanted to change them, you could. All right, then again, make sure to test these different possibilities. Now, I'm going to do this one a little different, and what I mean is, what I want to show you here first is the program. Why? Because I want you to understand that what I started with was I didn't change all this stuff that you see until I get to, I guess, right there. All that stuff, that's the same as last time. I didn't change that. The first thing I like to do when I go and add something is make sure I didn't break something that already works. All right? So then I came in and notice it would have been a better idea really to put all these inside of try catches. But I just put the new stuff inside of try catches. And kind of dumb names, no name D for no name dog. You can see I left the name out. All right. So, and a no name input exception, no name input exception. I didn't do a lot with it. All right. So what I had to do was I had to come in here and I had to write those exceptions. They didn't exist by default. All right. So here's the no name. I literally took this right from your book. Pages 526 and 527 show you how to write your own exceptions. It's what I have found is the number of people who will screw up a program, all right, because of system things are typically minimal. But the number of people who, you're doing a miles per gallon program. Somebody fat fingers, instead of putting in 300 miles, they put in 3,000, something like that. And your program only goes up to 1,000. Well, that's an error, correct? But you have to handle that error because it's a valid integer or a valid double. So if you've got specs like that, you have to write it. That's why I had you write these. All right? So all it says here, name cannot be empty. That's it. And what this says is grab that message, send it to the parent, and have the parent handle it. All right? So I've got the name of the exception, colon exception, because this inherits from this. All right? Then a message, and then send that to the parent. Then if you'll notice, the type is virtually identical, except that instead of saying no name, it says no type. And instead of saying name cannot be empty, it says type cannot be empty. So that's going to handle those two things if I leave either one of those blank. All right? So what else is left? All right, we've got, let's look at the ones that we have for our pet class. So there's the age. Okay. Now, I have to admit something to you here, and that's laziness on the part of the instructor. Okay, and that is when you work with Java, and again, I think Ethan will attest to this. When you work with Java, you can create interface files. And in interface files, oftentimes what you put in there are global constants that you want the entire program to be able to handle. Well, I didn't do a good enough job of looking in, because I probably could do that in C# too. The advantage of doing that then is rather than saying 1 in 25, I could have used those global constants. Because if in the future, all right, and I think we've done this in one of the classes, if not both in here. But again, I think Ethan will agree with this. You do a lot of work in here with stuff like BMI calculators, body mass index, because it's easy and people can understand it. All right. But what's been happening over time, I've already heard they're talking again about possibly changing the guidelines. Right now, if your BMI is 30 or above, you're obese. That might change to 30 and above, you're overweight. All right. I don't know if you ever heard, this is the old joke, guy, this is not meant to be real funny, it's not a ha-ha, but a guy comes in and he's got to give a report where he works, and this is sales. And it doesn't look very good, right? So he does this. He says, oh, we still got a long way to go, so don't worry about it because it's going to spike and go up again. All right? Well, in much the same way, bless you, I think that when we have problems, and I have my own health problems, but when we have problems with obesity and the like, what we do is we just change the bar rather than trying to change behavior. All right? So that was the one for the age. The one for the weight is virtually identical to the one for the age, except it says weight instead of age. In fact, the other two, invalid num tricks and invalid num hairballs, all right, they're virtually all the same one. Okay? But then what I had to do was I had to come in here, all right, and I had to go back to the actual program file. Let me close a few of these. And we'll start with a dog. Now, the purebred, again, if you did not put in true or false, it's not going to work anyway. So I didn't do any testing there. Could you have? Sure, we could have. All right, but I didn't. Now, the num tricks, so this is what I ended up doing. Again, this is right from, I think it's page 527. Let's double check. In your book. Of course, I closed it. Yep, looks like I did. So again, I don't know what kind of person you are as far as when I tell you this. There's page 526. There they're showing you how you can set up the exception. Then on page 527, they show you how you use the exception in code and how you use the exception in the driver. That's exactly what I did. All right? So again, if the value for number of tricks is less than 0, or it's greater than, I don't know what that was, 15 or something like that, then I said, hey, throw one of those exceptions. All right? And the problem is I've got a little problem with my verbiage. In other words, when I run this, it does go through it, Those are all the good ones. But notice, see, as soon as it's bad, no matter where I put the read line, it was just shooting right off the page. It's handling it, but I got to figure out where to put the darn read line, and I didn't do that. I went to do that this morning. I forgot to. No excuse. I just forgot to. All right. But you'll notice then, so that's the number of tricks. If I go over to the cat, it's the same thing exactly, but it's the number of hairballs. All right. If I go back to the pet, now I've got to check in pet for nothing in the name field. Oh, there's part of my, oh, that's probably why it blew up. I didn't check for it being empty. That might be why it was blowing up. I don't know. All right. So check for nothing in the name field. Then check to see if the age is out of range, either on the low end or the high end. Check and see if the weight is out of range on the low end or the high end. All right. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Questions. This is your chance to ask. Went through that faster than I thought we would. So if there's something that still doesn't make sense, or you're working on your assignments, etc., and something doesn't make sense, again, that's why Ethan is here. I'll speak for him because if I'm wrong, he'll correct me anyway. But he wants you to come up and ask him questions. That's why he's here. He gets better at what he's doing, the more he can help you. All right? So that's what he's looking to do. That's one of the reasons we brought him in here. All right? Yes. I still think I'm probably still going to have a problem, but we can try it. So like I said, somewhere in here, that read line is just making it, it's not kicking in, for lack of better words. I'll have to go back and take a look at in the book and at my own code. All right. Is it possible I did something wrong? It certainly is. All right. But does anybody have any questions over what I was asking you to do in any of this stuff? The only difference tomorrow is you can look at it, or you're going to do it on something else, but I've kind of combined these two together. All right? So this first part, just creating the class, all right? And it's a class, and then you do create two classes based off of it, just like this. That first part is 50 points. That said, if you're working on that tomorrow and you get in here at 8 and it's 10 o'clock and you're still on here, then I would start working over here. You really and truly should be able to do this in probably a half an hour or so. All right? Some of you, and you know who you are, have a tendency to turn tests in early. I'm not going to be that surprised if one or more of you is done by 9:30 or so. All right. I'm not going to be surprised if it's 5 to 12 and some of you are thinking, God, I wish I had more time. I mean, that's just human nature. All right. Paul Knott was telling me, Paul teaches in the other room in the afternoon. He teaches the hardware program. And he was telling me how one of his best students, they have to go in for at least 1 or 2 certifications per semester. That one of his students went in for a certification, and Paul, he goes down with him to St. Louis, and Paul noticed that he just, the guy, he said the guy's a really good student, but he said you could just tell he didn't seem confident. And what ended up happening is he ended up taking the entire time. Most people for that certification, I think he got like 3 or 4 hours. Most people were done in an hour. He took the entire time. And he missed getting certified by, I think you needed a 700, and he got like a 690 something. So he just missed. Paul said, what happened? He goes, I don't know. I went and took the test 7 times, and I changed a lot of answers every time. Don't do that. If you're fairly certain when you create this to begin with that it looks the way you think it should look, all right, if you decide later you're going to make major changes, then please, for gosh sakes, do one of 2 things. Either make a copy of everything you have and put the copy someplace, or comment out everything you have in code. All right? And maybe I told you this because I'll always remember the first real programming class I took. The language isn't used that much anymore. It's called COBOL. All right. But the first class I took where I had to really do some programming was COBOL. And I finished this. It was a loan type of program where you put in an amount and it told you what your monthly payment was, etc. And that's not yours tomorrow, just so you know. But it was something like that. And I got it done. And I went to the instructor and I said, hey, Terry, he was like a month older than me and he wouldn't let me call him Mr. Waldvogel. All right. So I said, hey, Terry, I got this to work, but I think I could make it work a lot better. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll ask you to do just one thing then. And it's exactly what I just told you. He said, make a copy and work with a copy or comment out, comment out everything you've done so far. And I said, why? He said, you tell me when you get done. I got it to work, but I totally had to do a rewrite on it. And I lost, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have lost everything I had that was right to begin with. He said, why did I tell you to do that? He said, for when I screwed it up. He said, you're right, not for if you screw it up, for when you screw it up. If you are a programmer long enough, you will screw something up. It's human nature. It's one of the reasons that people who keep touting things like artificial intelligence and machine language, they keep saying, we won't have any errors then because the computers will be writing all the code. But who's got to program the computers to write the code? To my knowledge, well, other computers. Then who's got to program those computers? Somewhere along the line, there will be human beings involved. And as long as there are human beings involved, there is the chance for doing things wrong. All right? So again, when you come in here tomorrow, 8:05, all right, I'm going to start the test. Last thing I want to show you, this is really and truly, believe it or not, this is more for my afternoon class, but I want to show you this because I got this morning. From Mr. Corrigan. So I want to take a minute to go over it with you. Good morning, everyone. I want to put out an email about student absences. I'm just going to paraphrase. You can read it. But what he's saying is, hey, if you're on the job, okay, and let's say that you are on the job for literally the same amount of time this class meets. All right, so what? We started in January, mid-January. February, March, April, May. 4 months. Sound fair? All right, so 4 months, 40, let's say you're working 40 hours a week over 4 months, about 600 to 700 hours. Okay? So we're saying that during that amount of time, 700 hours, and that's on the high end, it's probably closer to 650. Okay? You can miss up to about 50 of those hours. Again, doing the math, it's about 7 or 8%. I've had problems this semester because I've had students, and the reasons have been valid. They're sick, kids are sick, parents are sick, etc. But what he is telling me is, believe it or not, what they want to do at the St. Louis campus, sorry, they want to change the maximum days that you can miss from 6 to 5. They're saying we're making it too nice on people. Charles wrote back and said, no, don't do that. I wrote back and said, I agree 100% with Charles. Things are always going to happen, no matter what they are. I mean, something unexpected is always going to happen. All right? But what I'm telling you is, if you miss and you think, I missed and it was valid, okay? Evan wakes up in the morning, he thinks, geez, I think I got strep throat. He goes to the doctor and he finds out he has strep throat, so he misses that day. And the doctor says, you shouldn't go in today or tomorrow. Then get a frigging doctor's note that says that. Then I can take that excuse and make it an excused absence. Otherwise, it goes in as unexcused. Now, one of my students yesterday, Brady, comes in from work. I think he works in Chesterfield. I'm not sure. Wherever he was coming in from, there was a bad car accident. And he texted one of the students and said literally it had been over an hour. He hadn't moved a bit. So he was going to miss class. Because he figured by the time he got there, it would have been, so late, he would have been marked absent anyway. So he wasn't going to come. I understand that. You know what? He could take a picture of it. But that still isn't considered an excused absence. And again, if I think that an excused absence is if you miss because you're legitimately sick. But if, oh, I coughed a couple times, I don't want to go in today. And you don't go in and you don't provide anything, it's not an excused absence. Now, let's say it's next Monday. Jesse gets a call in the morning. Somebody says, you know what, I don't know how, but somebody, saw his portfolio online. Says, man, I think you'd be what we're looking for a job. Could you come in and interview this afternoon? He does that. And literally, he lets me know that that's an excused absence. All right? But if you say, you know what, the new Star Wars movie's coming out today, and I got to go see it. That's not an excused absence. All right? I mean, if you have to ask whether or not it's an excused absence, it probably isn't. Mr. Corrigan has started to push his own envelope because in the past, he hasn't even allowed sickness. And he hasn't even allowed death. Not your death, but the death of, going to a funeral. That's not an excused absence. All right? The school gives you 3 days. When my dad passed away, I had 3 days. I only took one because it was right, it was the way it worked, was right at the end of the semester. And I had people coming up to me. You should have taken the other 2 days. No, I couldn't because it was the last week in the semester. That's just how it worked. All right? But again, if nothing else, the school is going to get more of a hard-ass mentality on this rather than a soft-ass mentality. And I'm telling you people, because I can tell the people in the afternoon class, but they have 40 more days and then they're out of here. You have the equivalent of 120 more days. All right, so you've got time to learn, etc. The other thing, technically, after you have 2 tardies, every tardy you have after that is considered an absence. This is not my rules. That's not my rule. These are Rankin's rules. Some of you are consistently tardy. Some of you might have very valid reasons. Traffic was really bad this morning. Well, if you know that's going to keep happening, then leave 5 or 10 minutes early. All right? And again, usually what I do is if you're here and it's 8:06, 8:07, I'll still mark you as present, not being tardy. He doesn't. You probably found that out when he was in here. Literally, when his machine clicks over to 8:05, Tony walks in right after, you're still tardy. He doesn't care. All right? And some instructors here, because I've talked to them, some are like that, some are more like I am. All right? But if push comes to shove, if they do that, what they're going to do is they're going to make everybody like he is. All right? And the last thing I'll leave you with this, because I've told you this before, every single frigging semester, when I have to go down to St. Louis, I get to hear our VP go and read out of the student handbook to us. Now, I'm not criticizing him. Sometimes there's changes, and he does an exceptional job of going through those changes. He really does. Sometimes it's a rehash. And what I've said is I think that what should happen is he should come here, and when you have your orientation day, he should read it to you guys. And then I've heard, what I heard back after I said that was, you got to realize that into that orientation, 5 minutes in, the students aren't listening anyway. Which made me kind of laugh, and I thought, okay. So I've been here 2 years. I've heard the same stuff now 4 times. And you don't think after 5 minutes, I sort of start tuning out? I see people around me, and we've got seats where you can't see, which I see people around me, they have their laptops on their desks, on their laps, and they're sitting there typing stuff in. I wouldn't do that because I think that's disrespectful to him. All right? But there are a lot more people I see every semester that are doing that. So if you have any questions about this, and let's say that Matt here says, you know what, I just think that's totally unfair. I think the whole setup, et cetera, is totally unfair. And I'm not saying you think that, but if you do, then what you do is you try to get involved in student government. It's kind of harder because most of it is out of St. Louis. But they have meetings, and they will let you Skype in if you want to do that. And you can make suggestions. Typically, if you make a suggestion, even if people agree with it, it takes at least a year for it to go into effect. All right. Questions on any of that? Probably shouldn't have even taped it. Hopefully Mr. Pohl won't get mad that I said that about him, all right? Because it was not meant to be disrespectful. It might have sounded like it. It really and truly was not meant to be. All right. All right, the rest of the period, then the last hour is yours.